So we shut down again, yeah. That's going pretty good so far.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
what,
it's kind of predictable, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what we're doing, so we can't do inside restaurants. They can still eat on a patio in a restaurant. You can't be inside. Gyms, all bars, hair salons, movie
bowling
theaters,
alleys,
wineries and tasting. Yep.
Oh, wineries and tastings too.
They're called family entertainment centers.
Yes. Zoos and museums.
Card rooms.
All that stuff.
So basically my behavior doesn't change at all.
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, basically not.
Yeah.
So apparently there are like two tiers to how the governor shut things down today. One is for all 58 counties, and then the other one is for the ones that are on the state watch list, which I think you had to be on for something like 3 days based on your number of COVID cases, new cases, and also severe cases, I think is the criteria. Yeah. And so
Sacramento's there.
Yeah. And so if you're in any of those, you also have to close down your gyms and any worship service. They say protests, which is kind of funny because if it's a protest, that's the whole point.
Right. Nail salons,
and barbershops and that sort of thing. Any malls,
tattoo parlors,
like any of the massage, body waxing, those kind of places, and then also the offices that were non-essential sectors, which is really interesting to me because the number of people who have said to me recently or asked me recently, like, "Oh, are you back in the office or not?" And I've just been like, "Huh?
Hell no."
I'm so confused by that. I was like, what world is everyone living in? And like now the NBA is talking about doing this abbreviated season and the NFL hasn't canceled theirs yet. And I'm just like,
they're getting ready to open schools back up.
Yeah.
In the fall.
Fuck.
Luckily, LAUSD said they won't, but I think Sacramento City Unified has like a 44-page reopen plan, and they keep asking for input on it. And it's like, here's my input.
No.
Don't reopen.
Don't.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
I mean, this is very, I feel like on the show, we've talked about the inevitability of today in terms of closing things back up. But I think I was talking to some friends today about just my shock at how many people... Shock isn't even the right word because it makes me sound stupid, but like how many people were just like back to regular life.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yep.
What is going on?
Every time I walk by Lowbrow and see the fucking like Folsom and Roseville types hanging out there, I'm just like, get out, go.
I went. I had lunch with my folks the other day, and I put in an online order at a sandwich shop, and went in to pick the sandwiches up on my way over to their house. And I walk in, and there's a guy in there with just like a napkin, like draped over his nose, like a paper napkin that was like sort of hanging over one ear and his nose. And it was just like. Sweet dude, that's a great look. Great. Thanks for doing as much as you can do for this. And then like immediately, so I'm already mad at this guy, and then this dude walks in behind me. He's just like, "Do I have to wear masks in here?"
Yes.
And you can see like all the people, like the workers in the sandwich shop, just kind of being like no one wants to say yes because then you're gonna get yelled at by some fucking idiot who probably has COVID-19. So all these guys, all the workers are like, no, man, come on in, whatever. Thanks. So, I walked out of there and was like, we're going to be doing this shit in 2024.
No, I will never shake a hand again. I will never again know the touch of a woman. This is it. This is my life now.
No, it's not. I do. It's interesting because my childhood friend, shout out to Bethany. I don't even know if I know her married last name, but she used to be Bethany McLaughlin. And Bethany and I have been going back and forth about COVID, and she's in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And she was like, I'm really curious to know if like Pittsburgh would have done better if they had used a different system for how they described reopening, because her thoughts were, because green in most people's opinion means go, even though there were still significant restrictions on how we were supposed to be engaging. And she was just wondering, if we had called it something else, if more people might have taken it a little more seriously and thought to themselves, like, no, we're still under this, versus like green means go. And I just thought it was an interesting take on it. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, maybe.
I would love to
know the
think
psychology.
I'd be interested to see if things were different, if we use different colors. But here's the reality. When restaurants are allowed to open up outside, right? Alfresco dining.
Yeah,
there are people
alfresco.
Right. There are people in Sacramento who had been locked up in their homes for 3 months. And they decided that on 100-degree day, the best choice would be to sit al fresco and eat at the old spaghetti factory in the parking lot. So what I'm saying is,
that's like the most depressing scenario I can fucking imagine. Just sitting in the parking lot of fucking old spaghetti factory in 100-degree weather, just fucking choking down like a chicken fettuccine, just like
they're like inhaling the brown J butter Street and Mizithra. So what I'm saying is, I'm not sure that those colors mattered that much. Yeah. I think people are just,
it's a sociology thing too. People are just like, so they need to be around people again.
And we
keep fucking up.
Yeah, and I get the need to be around people, and I think it's really important that we try to balance out like the things that are good for our mental health. There was a meeting earlier today of some of the, folks who are in the continuum of violence prevention, and one of the things they were critiquing was that they weren't deemed essential workers, right? And that their meetups with their clients were shut down. They were told they couldn't engage with them, and to work from home and all of that, and it doesn't work that way. And so one of the things that I think public health sometimes doesn't get, I shouldn't say public health doesn't get it right, but I think the balance between who's messaging and what the public health message is there's this premium on infection control. And sometimes we don't actually do the appropriate triaging, which is like, you live with 5 people and you are getting human contact on a regular basis. So no, you shouldn't be out at a restaurant eating inside, right? But for somebody who is actively needing like substance abuse treatment, or actively in the midst of like mental health care, you do have to triage their needs. And sometimes their social and emotional needs are worth still engaging in some prevention measures, but not the most extreme ones, because the risk of violence or the risk of self-harm or the risk of other things is higher and honestly more emergent than their risk of COVID. And I think that's the part that hasn't really been appreciated. Like, nobody was recommending we shut down hospitals and nurses stay home, right? And physicians stay home. So we have to think the same thing when it comes to like other essential public health services. And so I honestly wish that if we had to choose, we would have chosen some of our violence prevention workers over keeping other places open, like, unfortunately, restaurants and things like that, because
what do you mean by
there's
violence
a need.
Prevention workers?
So I mean the people who are working with youth who are high risk. And so that is like a continuum of folks, from the folks who are just doing basic prevention of like providing services to kids, which is certainly needed right now, to folks like Advanced Peace that are intervening in people who often already have cases, may already own weapons, et cetera. And we did have, the last 9 days, we haven't had any shootings or deaths, which is awesome. But prior to that, we had actually, in a 45-day period, more people die from gun violence than from COVID, right? And so there was a clear need there. If we're talking about protecting lives, gun violence is another way that people die. And so we certainly want to make sure that we are, we're engaging in public health in all ways. So I just want to throw that out there as another thing that, like, we need to be smart about this, and who's deemed essential should be really carefully considered, and not just on a whim.
Yeah, we've driven this home before, and we should continue to. These are social services, effectively, and they ameliorate, mental health stressors and community stressors that these kids are going through, and really have a great impact on them. Maybe we pay them through the pandemic and let some of the cops that are sitting on the corner with their thumbs up their asses go home.
Right.
Just a
would
thought.
love.
Yeah, bored cops is a bad deal. You don't want these guys to get bored.
Our we got a request from our leftist Ira Glass that we try and keep this episode under an hour, so maybe we should get started.
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
Yes.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard. Voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Shannon.
And Flo.
A full house today. No guest, so we get to really go off the rails if we want.
It's gonna be so good.
Love it.
Normally we're really reserved when we have guests on. That's how it works.
And today we're talking about two of our favorite topics, so I'm sure we're going to have a real wild one. And those will be later on in the show. We'll be discussing Mayor Steinberg's push for strong mayor. But currently, I know we can't wait.
We're pumped about that, right? We'll get to that, but we want him to be. We want to do that, right, with him.
I think he's been I think he could use some strength training. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So
lots of push-ups.
Mm-hmm. So I'm for that, I guess.
He should get to those gyms.
We'll also, well, he can't right now.
No, it's too late. Can't do that.
But to begin, why don't we start with some media discussion? Yesterday, it was revealed, over the weekend, it was revealed that McClatchy, which is the sort of the media conglomerate that owns the Sacramento Bee, and the Sacramento Bee is its centerpiece news outlet, has just been bought by a hedge fund company called Chatham Asset Management, based out of Jersey.
Love any place that's called an asset management.
Yeah, that sounds legit.
Mm-hmm. Love doing that in Jersey too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the general read on this is that this is a bad thing. And let me explain why. Well, first of all, I guess let's give a little background to this. I've talked about how the daily newspaper has been in trouble for as long as the internet has been around, right? I mean, Craigslist came about, and then the advertising sort of setup that newspapers had really kind of started crumbling over the years. Now Facebook's and Google's own really a monopoly on the advertising spaces in the world, and newspapers year to year are going from being a cash cow in like 1995 to absolute skeletons of what they were back then. For instance, you look at McClatchy. They bought in 2006 Knight Ridder, which was really the beginning of the end for them. Knight Ridder was one of their other media conglomerate, kind of a, they were out there, they were a competitor. They bought them for $4.5 billion plus, and they took on their $2 billion in debt. When they bought them, McClatchy had 15,000 employees. Today, up until 2018, in 2018, they had 3,300. They probably have even fewer today. Newsrooms are decimated, right? That's basically 1/5 almost of what it was.
Yeah, I think there was something about how between 2004 and 2019, 50% of newspaper jobs just went away nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was sort of like put off a little bit, only 50%, right? Because this is what, 68% or 70%, 75, I don't know. It's a lot of, basically this company's been decimated by a majority, but there were internet journalism jobs that came about. And so they filled a little bit of the gap there, but it's still, I mean, it's completely decimated and there's really not a business model currently. So what we're seeing happening is these big hedge funds, right, run by billionaires who are assholes, coming in, taking over these papers and gutting them. They don't care if they're doing news or not. They don't care if your local paper's doing anything. They just want to make sure that their stockholders are getting the money that they are promising them. So they gut the papers, they pull the money out of them, pull basically as much out of them as they can, and then fucking move on. I believe the head of Chatham used to be the head of junk bonds at, where was that? It was one of the evil fucking companies on Wall Street, right? So this is the type of person that we have
This is such a great system.
Running
these are definitely the people who should own newspapers. This rules.
Yeah, because we definitely don't need, we don't need to shine a light on people who specialize in opaque trading and who have built reputations for themselves on Wall Street of being highly litigious, somewhat regularly having the feds keeping an eye on them. Like, those are the people that should own our local daily, in my opinion.
Right. I'm kind of conflicted about this. Why did I say conflicted so weirdly? Conflicted about this.
Said it that way.
I don't know where that was coming from. I'm going to blame the White Claw. I'm conflicted about this because, one of the arguments that I've seen put forth, and that makes sense on its face, but maybe not, is that we want these, our daily newspapers to be owned by local folks. But, and obviously Voices River City is not a local paper, right? Like, we're a news outlet, but not a paper. But if you take the Sacramento Bee, for example, this has been owned by a family for 163 years. Like, I mean, that means that for 7 generations, this newspaper has been owned by a family, which is 7 generations of wealth. For our listeners, who have not tuned into or who've not turned into YouTube, I'm Black. And 163 years ago, I can tell you things weren't that great. And there certainly weren't newspapers that lots of people who look like me owned and could pass down for generations to their families. So this paper was just sold for, I think, somewhere around $300 million. And that's not exactly like small, folksy, company to me. And so when we talk about these papers being locally owned, it's usually because we want them to be able to speak truth to power and to be able to question power and be independent in this way. And I'm not saying you can't be independent sitting on something worth $300 million, but the whole speaking truth to power, like, you are probably part of the power structure, especially after 7, 8, 10 generations, right, of owning this paper. So I kind of question how much of that is real or imagined. Like, I'm really curious, after this sale becomes final in the third quarter, like, will we actually notice any difference in the Sac Bee? Because already it's left of our alt weekly right now, right? Which is kind of a strange thing to have happen. So 2020 is just kind of topsy-turvy, right?
I will say that part, I think they've done that out of urgency, and daily newspapers have been like, oh shit, maybe we have to, do this totally 180 on these issues, right? Like Black Lives Matter. I can get deeper into that in a minute. But your point is 100% spot on, right? These multi-millionaires are croquet playing, sweater draped around the shoulder, fucking rich old money people, right? You ever been down to Hearst Castle down on?
Right.
It's wild, wild how much money these media moguls had. So not only do they work for the interests of capital, they are capital. These are the interests of capital.
Right.
And, Pulitzer, Hearst, we kind of deify them within the industry, but you look back on that, the fucking movie Newsies is based about how they were trying to crush a union of a bunch of kids that had nothing, just like trying to sell papers on the streets. Like, these were never good people. And it was never about, speaking truth to power to them. Journalists join the industry because they believe that. There is usually a very strong streak. And there's a reason why, something like 8% of journalists are Republicans, because everyone else is like, no, I do this because I want to, damn the man and fight for the people. Right. But I think that's absolutely right.
Does that make Trump right when he says the lefty liberal bias?
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a whole nother thing. And we had Matt Taibbi speaking like an idiot on Chapo last Thursday about this, about how, whatever happened to the media just being objective and not having a point of view and blah, blah, blah. You know what? We all have fucking points of view.
Yes.
Objectivity is on its face impossible to achieve.
Right.
And we should acknowledge our biases in our work, and we should respect our readers and listeners enough to let them know what those positions are, what our biases are, and then they can use that as they're digesting the work we do. It's bullshit. The whole idea of the objective journalist, this is all Pulitzer, New York, like bullshit.
Well, people always say when they talk about like objectivity in this way, it feels like it's always an argument to like, oh, we have to like treat ridiculous ideas and stances as if they have worth when they don't, right? Like, I feel like that's what like objectivity means to a lot of people, is like, well, you guys say that climate change is a big problem, but this doctor over here says that it's not. So objectively, we have to treat both of these things as if they hold an equal amount of value. And that's just not fucking true. Yeah. And it's in fact disingenuous to do that and to host people and to platform people who have ridiculous ideas about, whatever, the fucking flat earth, climate change, no mask wearing shit. Like, I don't know. I just always feel like when people are like objectivity, they're just saying like, I want these wackos to have a platform.
I mean, to Flo's point on previous episodes, honestly, when I'm dealing with a journalist, I want them to be biased against the QAnon fucking idiots. I want them to be skeptical of what they're saying, and I want them to approach people with a little more respect, who have dedicated their life's work to achieving a PhD or whatever in the science that they're pursuing. Are there people we should respect outside of, academia and everything? Absolutely. But you have to be able to approach any issue and know who is speaking, or at least be able to discern who's speaking more truth and who isn't. And that involves you. That involves you as a subjective person participating in the process. And we've been lying for 100 years to people about how journalism actually works, claiming objectivity is actually a thing.
Dave, what's the quote that you always say, and I always feel like I'm going to mess it up? The goal is to something the something and something the something, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. There we go. That's it. I was like, I knew the rhythm, but not the words.
Yeah. And that's an old journalistic principle. It's not really written in our tenets or anything. It's not, something that they talk about it, in journalism school, but it's not, particularly written in stone. But that was the principle I approached journalism with.
Shannon, you were going to say something.
And I'm questioning now whether or not I should say it or if I'm just going to look like a dummy again. But here we go.
Is this another one of your weird flat earth conspiracy theories? Because this is not the place for that, Shannon.
Yes.
Also, we agree with you. The earth is flat.
The earth is flat. I've been to the edge. I looked out over it, and there's nothing but elephants all the way down.
Damn.
Man,
Bleak.
here we go with the hard truths. So, okay. Journalism is not where I rest my head, because I hang out in homelessness and Steinberg hatred.
Yeah, but you and I, for like the last 3 years, meet 2 nights a week to yell about both of our professions. So I think you've got
Yeah. I mean, sure. I was gonna say, but then here I am on this podcast twice a week, which is, local fucking reporting. So, anyway, as I'm thinking about this, this purchase, or this bid, I guess, because it's not yet gone through.
It's not finalized, correct. It's supposed to go through the third quarter of the year.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Pardon me, I'm burpy from the White Claw. So I think about thank you, I appreciate it. I'm gonna get to the point eventually. So when a hedge funder buys a newspaper, that fucks with like the central tenets of the newspaper, right? Like it changes the way things are run. It changes the way and I guess what I'm thinking is like suddenly it turns into sort of like a business model of journalism, which then and this is all more a question. So then I think about, the Sacramento Bee as we know it now, which I think it was Kempa who said the Sacramento Bee should be called the Sacramento Tea, because Teresa Clift does all the reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, Teresa Clift rules.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about Teresa Clift specifically when I'm unpacking this thought, because you have this reporter who or this journalist who is clearly talented. She is just like up to her fucking eyeballs in stories because the world is moving, because the news cycle just won't quit. And she's probably like exhausted and over caffeinated and all of these things. And then you end up with like a hedge and struggling as the newspaper exists without this bid. And then you have like a hedge funder come in and say, we'll take care of your debt and give you $300 million to take over your newspaper. And like what I think when I read that is like, this is just it's a hedge funder that's just going to like perpetuate the grind culture. That means that Teresa's work doesn't lighten or get easier. It means that she has more because they're just trying to make money, right? Like,
yes.
So it's not really taking care. It's not really fixing a problem. It's not, again, we're in a situation where we're not like, the worker is not considered.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot to say to that.
Turning money.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would like to hear it. This is not a well thought out.
No, that was actually a great point, and I think it dovetails with Flo's conflicted point as well.
Those conflicted points are
so. When a hedge fund takes over a newspaper conglomerate, and again, McClatchy wasn't this like little local shop, right?
Right.
They ran 30 papers throughout the U.S. This is, big, and they bought Night fucking Ritter.
That Night fucking
But
Ritter.
Chatham, like other hedge funds who have sneaked into the industry, they were the ones giving they were selling this debt. They were taking this debt on from the paper company over and over again until basically they own them fucking already. And they have a history of having some very shady bond sort of trading and how they present it. Fortune did a good article on Chatham in that. So like this is on its face some really dark, twisted Wall Street shit.
Yep.
On top of that, you look at someone like Alden Capital. That's another hedge fund that's been just decimating the industry. They took over the Denver Post, And there is a classic picture of the entire Denver Post staff when Alden took over 1 year, and then 2 years later, who on the staff was left. And it's like 1/6 of the editorial staff. So yes, it turns into a place where they cut out a lot of these older folks who have, they have big salaries because they've been around since the papers were cash cows in 1995, right?
Right.
And they leave young folks, the Teresa Cliffs, people younger than her, and they don't pay you as well. They probably don't pay her what she's deserved already. They don't, they expect you to work longer hours. It's basically a decimation of workers' rights over and over again.
Yeah.
And that is the fear of what's going to happen when Chatham takes over McClatchy. We don't know. We honestly don't know, but it's something that should be really concerning to us. And I would be roundly surprised if the Bee, if they've ever done it, but if they went hard on opaque trading, on bond trading, on reporting on that kind of stuff, now that they're owned by one of the weirdest players, shadier players in the industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you were saying, Dave, like one of the tenants, right? And like you said, not written into the thing, but like afflict the comfortable, right? Nobody can do that if the paper is owned by the comfortable. Like there's that's not, that like flies in the face of it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that phrase is interesting to me because I think, to me, all that says is something that I already believe, which is to punch up, like always punch up and never punch down.
Yeah.
But you can't punch up at the people who own your paper. And like that right there, just that step is really, I don't see how you get past that. I don't know how
unless you can. I mean, I do think that there are some ways to be able to put some safeguards in place so that your, limitations don't become an organization's limitations. I have to really shout out my executive director because when we started the equity team in our organization, his question was, should I join the equity team so that the full force of the recommendation of the equity team become, enshrined in how we do work in the organization? And ultimately he decided not to, because he was like, I'm a 60-plus-year-old white man, and I don't want my limitations to become the organization's limitations. Instead, I do a better service to listen to whatever comes out of that team and make sure that the executive team and the board backs that up. And that's the best way to do it. But if I'm on the team, then the power of just having the executive director in the room changes your ability to be honest and what recommendations come from it. So I do think there is a way to be able to say, here is the line between your editorial board or between whoever is like running the day-to-day operations and who owns it, and say, I want to make sure that's clear so that you're not sort of bootlicking, but there's a barrier there that will protect you so you can be honest.
I'm going to do you one better because that sounds great, but we can't just hope to have a benevolent despot, right?
Right.
In all of our companies.
Right.
What we need is a totally different structure.
Yeah.
And what I would offer up is the news co-op model, somewhat leaderless and not responsive to an owner or even, this board of rich people who's sitting over the owner, beholden to the working class people of your local community. My friends at the Mendocino Voice have been working overtime to try and create something like that up in Mendocino County, of all places. But they're making it work, and it's really interesting. And I'm trying to actually get Adrian, one of their founders, on the phone to sort of discuss that, actually for the future of voices, right? Because I'm really worried now looking at our media landscape. I honestly don't think the News and Review is in that great of a place either. So what do we do without a News and Review? What do we do without a Bee?
Right.
And I think what we turn to is local independent online news publishers. They are popping up all over the U.S. We are figuring out business models. Our group is called Lion Publishers, and we meet and talk about this shit regularly. Voices used to be a news site. I turned it more into the platform for our podcast, but I see us in the near future leaning more and more in that direction.
I'm excited about that. I'm very, very excited to see that happen for sure.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think it should have to be a benevolent despot. Just to be clear, I'm more so saying that, like, I think that you can put structures in place, because now the practice is that people in certain leadership positions don't serve in certain capacities, so that even though they still have leadership, there is an ability and a structure where you can be honest, and at least you're getting wise counsel. What you do with it ultimately is your choice, but at least that part of the process isn't tainted. And I think a lot of what you just described is exactly that. It's being intentional about what the structure looks like. I also think, we've talked about this before, but like boards in general are often comprised of people who are invited to be there, and so they represent your social network. And so what would it look like, nonprofits, what would it look like, wherever, to be able to just have an open application and select people, not because of their ability to donate to your organization, but to really think about the diversity of whatever it is that you're doing and actually accurately reflect that. I see a lot of youth organizations that put young people on their board because that's what they're doing as service. And so it doesn't make sense to not have their leadership. So I think those are some ways that we can learn how to flip systems on their head.
Yeah, I love it.
Steinberg is like, I'm not 100% clear, but his position, he wants to somehow work to buy the Bee back, right? As a city or something.
Well, he wants a benevolent despot. He wants a local whale to buy it, basically.
To buy it. Okay. Yeah. But just to keep it local, just so it's not somebody from New Jersey just running the shit into the ground.
I mean, that motherfucker, him doing that is basically him trying to ingratiate them for our next topic.
Right.
And him trying to be like, oh, we're going to save the Bee. It's just so that they write nice things about him as I guess let's just start up on this now. Which
they do. I mean, they are extremely nice to him.
Yeah. They love him. They love to think about him. You know what? I would wager that they're thinking about Darryl Steinberg right now.
And
right now.
And they're loving it.
And they're fucking loving it.
Yeah.
I just always wonder why things in general aren't publicly owned more, right? I mean, we only have one NFL team that is owned. That's your beloved Packers. That's owned by the people of, of the area. I'm just wondering why we can't
That's
crowdfund everything else. I mean, there's one guy, it popped up on my news feed recently, or my memories, where he just wanted $10 to make potato salad for one time, and he made $57,000 because people just kept donating. And he was like, all I need is the ingredients to make potato salad. So he ended up with this astronomical amount of money in his GoFundMe.
Dang.
So I'm just
to make an awesome blossom. I got to get a crowdfunding thing going on.
Seriously. So I'm just why couldn't we do that?
Yeah. Well, the answer for our current system, it's capitalism, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's cutthroat.
Yeah. What you are describing, Flo, is dangerously close to socialism.
Yeah. And I don't think I'm comfortable.
I don't.
No. We don't talk about that here.
No.
But when we talk about structures of companies, I don't think people take seriously that a real social dynamic can exist within our current capitalist system. I would urge people to look up Mondragon Corporation in Basque Country in Spain. It's a co-op, basically, company that's worth millions and millions of dollars. And sure, I'm sure they're not perfect by any means, but there are ways to do this, and there are ways to make sure that
Agent Squillian just heard that, is already on the phone to the CIA. All right, guys, Boscland.
Oh, they hate Basque Country. All the feds of every country.
Hi, Agent Squillian.
Hi, Agent Squillian.
Hi.
Offers still on the table, Squillian.
Yeah.
Squillionaire.
Yo, Squillian.
All right. So,
Wait, Dave. So what? Speaking of the master of crows, if you will, he is up to some. I mean, it will shock probably none of our listeners to hear that he's up to some real stupid bullshit. Right? Can you kind of expand on this stupid bullshit that he's doing now?
I would prefer to pass the baton maybe to Flo. Otherwise, this can just be the episode where I just talk the whole fucking time.
Okay, so for those who may not remember, in 2014, I wasn't here during the first Strong Mayor, but 2014 was the second Strong Mayor. And then Mayor Kevin Johnson put it on the ballot. I believe it was Measure L at the time, to essentially move away from what we currently have, which is the mayor-manager model, which is basically like our mayor is the 9th city council member who is elected citywide. And so that gives you a bit of a bully pulpit because everybody voted for you, but in terms of actual power, you don't have veto power, you don't have the ability to develop the budget and that sort of thing. Most of the power in the city rests with a person whom many people don't even know the name of, and that is the city manager. And his name is Howard Chan. And so this would shift some of that power to the mayor who is elected instead of the city manager who is appointed and essentially a staff member.
Who appoints the city manager?
The city council.
Okay.
And mayor. So it's like a layer of accountability. But the thing is, city managers often survive the transition between councils and between elections. And they have a lot of discretionary power. Howard Chan can spend $100,000 basically without any council approval many, many times. That's not like $100,000. It's like he can't give any entity more than $100,000 a year without council approval. So that can be a large chunk of your budget. The city manager is also not subject to the Brown Act, which is the statewide sunshine law that requires a certain amount of advance notice when things are going to be decided on, requires that, meeting minutes and meeting agendas are publicly available and all of those things. So there's a lack of transparency on that side of city operations that doesn't exist in the same way on the elected side.
I think it's also important to note that the city manager, while in its on paper is not a political position,
it's very political.
The city manager is a political position.
Absolutely. So Sacramento has voted this down 2 times before. So this would be the 3rd iteration of Strong Mayor. There has been a poll in the field earlier this year. I think it was a telephone poll. I've heard several people say that they received it. Basically testing the waters and seeing. That was me licking my finger and seeing which way the wind is blowing. And
this is the second time Steinberg has done this, right?
No, this is the first time Steinberg has done it.
He floated it, didn't he?
He floated it last year.
He was testing the water about it, but he didn't actually go for it last time.
What they call that is a test balloon, right? It's you float an idea to a media outlet that's like, hey, I think the mayor's thinking about this. And then you see how the public responds.
Yeah.
And he's also, wait, am I cutting off your summary? Okay.
Oh.
He's also pushing this in a way that is fucked up. So in order for Strong Mayor to get on the ballot in November, this would have to be approved to meet in like 3 city council meetings, right? Like
2.
In 2 city council meetings.
The council comes back on July 21st, and they'll have 2 meetings because they're on recess the first week in August, and it has to be approved by August 7th in order to be on the ballot. So it's either July 21st or 28th.
So in like true Daryl, 11th hour form,
Shoving it down our throats.
And here's the thing, like, we know, it's not necessarily a surprise that he is trying to go this route, but it is certainly manipulative as fuck to do it right now in this way.
Can we make some theories as to why this is coming up right now? Because I have one.
Go for it, Skylar. I'll see if yours is the same as mine.
I think this dude sees Katie Valenzuela coming in and sees like some other changes of guard that are likely, especially in like Mai Vang is likely, or whatever to
or Pastor Les.
Yeah, or Pastor Les. But the old guard is changing. I think that he can see some shit coming down the line and being like, oh, these guys won't just get in line with whatever the fuck silly shit I want to do. So I need to work now to take power away from them and give it to myself so they don't have as much of a say over the dumb shit that I want to do with this city. That's my theory.
So that's not my theory, but I like it.
It's a perfect take.
Yeah, it is. My theory is a little more cynical. So my theory is that, yeah, I know. My theory is that this is an attempt to rebrand, because Darrell Steinberg was the darling of the Senate. And was seen as this very progressive person for 2014, right?
I don't know why that's so funny.
He was the darling of the Senate, right? He was the one who authored the millionaires tax, which is the Mental Health Services Act today, and all of these things, right? And then here he comes as mayor of the city. He had already served on city council, and he has gotten nothing but blowback. And then he was mayor over the Stephon Clark shooting. And like, he has gotten criticism from housing advocates, even though that was supposed to be his bread and butter and his baby and his area of expertise, right? And so I think he's trying to do this rebrand of like, yeah, I know I haven't been everything that you thought I would be, but that's because I haven't had the power. And I feel like this is a move, like all of these like little puzzle pieces lately of being able to kind of, say the right thing, but maybe not always do it, is a move to be able to rebrand. Because I still think he wants higher office. And I think he knows that if he fumbles this mayoral, his time as mayor very publicly, that will just go out the window, right? I think to Skylar's point, that we are moving in a different direction. And so this is his opportunity to be able to go in, then make himself the revolutionary leader that he wants to be. So then he will be able to parlay that into what he wants to do next. So I don't think his politics on some of these things have shifted. I think this is a way to rebrand and say, remember when you wanted that, money to go to this, and well, if you give me strong mayor, then I can line item veto things, and I can, do all of these things that I don't have the current authority to do.
Can we?
That's my take.
A different but equally perfect take.
Can we for a
That's
minute?
What we do on this show.
Just only perfect takes. Talk about what, and I'm probably going to miss something, but strong mayor means the following. It means that that the mayor would have the power to hire and fire the city manager, the treasurer, the clerk, the city attorney, and more. And those are elected positions. Yes or no?
No. So like many of those are appointed positions.
They're appointed positions, right?
But it would give one person, right now they're all appointed by the mayor and council. It would concentrate that power. The other thing is, I don't know what this iteration of strong mayor is going to look like, because all we've heard is he presented it to the Central Labor Council.
We don't know what it looks like.
So we don't actually know what's in there. We don't know what the implications will be for council power. We can only go by what it's looked like in the past.
Yeah. So I think So my list would have been going off my memory of KJ, and I think so. The one that I want, that I wonder if this will come up with Darrell, is introducing a budget that would only be able to be changed if the council like decided it, right? Like he would have a lot of budget power, as opposed to the way that it looks currently. And I wonder if that's like when we're talking about, like we talk about defund the police and he's like trying to rebrand, if he's attempting to take power over like all of these things to get like, because right now the narrative is I'm not actually the one that makes the decisions, right? Like
right.
but if he has all this power, it's just more power to fuck up.
Well, and also I would trust this a lot more if he was like vocal about like, yeah, I think these guys are right, we should defund the police, and then was like getting outvoted on this. That's not what he's fucking doing at all.
Right.
Like, dude, I did not forget you came into my neighborhood where I live with the fucking National Guard and sicked them on me. Like that was like last month. Yeah. Like this is like absolutely not. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that I think you're right, Skylar, that the track record, like, you know, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And so the real question here is, do people believe the rebrand of the last two, or the attempted rebrand of the last 2 weeks? Or are people going to say, no, this is how you've shown up as mayor for the last 4 years, and I'm not comfortable with giving you more power.
Right.
And I think that is a valid concern. I would, you know, Dave and I have a friend who actually said, well, there's an easy fix, but it's not politically easy, which is to pass it, but start it with the next mayor so that we actually get an opportunity to vote in, if it passes, who we want to have a strong mayor, you know, the strong mayor powers, as opposed to giving it to someone who's already elected as a weak mayor. You know, I don't know where I fall on this, because on one hand, there's so much protection because Howard Chan is the chief executive officer as opposed to the chief administrative officer. And so he is largely insulated from our critique. He doesn't have to tell us anything. He doesn't have to show us anything, right? There's just so much lack of transparency. And so
I love when we talk about him on this show.
I have an event invite to invite you to. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Involving this man.
So you know, there's so much lack of transparency that happens with the office of the city manager and all of the staff, right? The flip side of that is, so the downside of that is that we don't have any transparency. And the downside of that is also that means that the people we actually do elect and can seemingly hold accountable through elections are the layer between us and the administrator. So do you choose the devil you know or the devil you don't? Would you rather have the person who you elect be able to be out in 4 years, or a city manager who might serve 25 or 30 years in that capacity and basically default to the status quo? And I'm not making a case for strong mayor at all. I'm just saying I really feel conflicted because A, I don't have any details. B, I like the idea of being able to hold somebody elected accountable, but I also don't want the concentration of power. And so what I think could be a good way to move things is, how do we move some of the duties that are given to the city manager to the mayor and council together as a unit, as opposed to giving them to one person on the council?
Yeah.
I love it. You know, and it's like what you and I were talking about before, on sort of a structural level, right? Like, the current structure I don't like, which is why I'm open to conversations to new structures.
Right.
I don't trust a goddamn thing that comes out of this guy's mouth. And we shouldn't, right? When he was running in 2016, he made us promises on homelessness, and he has done nothing but terrorize our homeless community, or allowed our attorney's office and our police to do that. He has promised to, make changes on police behavior. He has done nothing of the sort. He promised, with these Measure U tax dollars, to put them towards community members who actually fucking needed it. And he totally fucking lied, bald-faced to us. So Yes, I'm open to a new structure. No, I'm not open really to what it is he has to say. And I really don't think I'd be interested to hear Fabrizio Sasso's point of view, the head of the Labor Council, on what Daryl said to him, because I really, really would be surprised if he said something that actually Labor would be like, oh yeah, okay, let's do this.
Right.
Yeah, and it. Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
I get the other thing is that when I think about Daryl as a strong mayor, he has shown us time and time again that politically and administratively his skills are, he doesn't have all the skills in either space that are necessary in order to hold the strong mayor position well. And what I think of when I think of holding the strong mayor position well, it's leading for the people, because the people are who elected you into office, right? And he just, I mean, we've said it here before, he's like a real sensitive mayor that doesn't have what the fuck it takes administratively to hire and fire a team of people who are responsible and have like convictions and principles that reflect the people of Sacramento. It also takes away power from people like Katie Valenzuela and hopefully Mai Vang or Pastor Les, whoever ends up in that seat. Like, it's pulling power away from the people who we've voted to have a seat on that dais, and gives it to Steinberg. Are you fucking kidding me?
No,
I can't.
No, I'm with you. Yeah.
I know that the argument is going to be greater accountability, and I'm sure that they're going to even say, it gives more voice to the activists and advocates. And I don't know. It's annoying to me because, like I said, the option is then we just keep the power with Howard Chan, which I hate.
Right.
So what do you do when you hate the status quo and then an option comes along to change it and you still also hate that?
Yeah.
Do you keep
want
the status
a shit
quo
sandwich or a piss burger?
Or do you like flip it around and flip the coin on this one? And I'm just like, I wish we did not always have to make a Sophie's choice.
Yeah. Yeah, would be nice.
Yeah.
So we currently don't know what it is he's offering, but
we won't know till the last minute because this is a topic for another meeting. But I actually have a whole brainstorm on what is so wrong about how we operate and how. What's interesting to me is we have the Brown Act at the local level. It does not apply to the state legislature. But in the state legislature, there are deadlines for when you can introduce legislation. There's a way where you can look up legislation by keyword, by bill number. You know what committees it's going to go to. You know when it's going to be heard. You have an ability to be able to plan. There's a way to be able to reach out to the author's office and know who brought it forth so you can talk about amendments. And I've seen more things fail in the state legislature on the floor or in a committee than I've ever seen in city hall. So the flip side of that is that the place where there's no transparency seems to have a much more transparent process. And here we are having to hit refresh on Thursdays, hoping to get an agenda to find out that, $20 million is on the agenda, or there's an anti-camping ordinance or whatever that's going to happen on Tuesday that nobody's seen, that you're only going to get 2 minutes to talk about, that you're not going to be able to hear pro and con arguments for, and that is already has 5 votes because nothing comes before council unless it has 5 votes. I can't think of anything that has failed at a city council meeting that I've been at since I've lived here over the last 10 years. I'm sure there's something, but
listeners, this tells you these conversations all happen behind closed doors to our detriment. Even though we have Brown Act laws, they're already having these conversations.
Right.
And it's fucked up.
Nothing fails
because we don't get to be a part of the process
at all.
And it just gets worse. We do strong mayor with Steinberg. It just gets worse.
Mm-hmm. So
and I'm just like, what do we do? No. Yeah. And the other side of this that's even more frustrating is that not only do all the things have 5 votes, but then you have to question, like, is that because everybody's chatting behind closed doors? Or in ways that maybe are legal, like I post on my blog and then you post on your blog and then I know where you stand on my issue, but we technically didn't talk, right? Or is it that nothing you've done is radical enough for anybody to even bother opposing it? I don't know. I don't know which is worse though. Like politicking to the middle or just direct talking across the table. I mean, as a spades player, I would say talking across the table is a cardinal sin and like, what are we doing? But I honestly don't know which is worse. The idea that we don't even try anything that possibly could fail. Is that how we live our lives?
Right.
In the no fail zone?
So where do you three land on this?
Oh, I'm still thinking about it.
I have no clue because I don't even know what it is. Is there a there? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very similar to Flo. Like, I like the idea. Like, obviously, like the best and most pristine form of government you can ever ask for, right, is like a benevolent dictator who's just like a good guy who sets all the rules to be good for everybody, right? But of course, that doesn't really work out in practice ever. And I don't know. Like, I share some of Flo's frustration because I feel like the system does need a change. But I can't get on board with the change being that Darryl Steinberg has more power to do what he wants to do. Like the guy,
when has he proven himself to anyone?
Yeah, he just can't stop fucking up. Why would we give him more power?
Who do we trust more, Howard Chan or Darryl Steinberg?
Right. Well, I mean,
that's what we're being asked to answer.
Right.
And this is actually a worse game than the Marry Fuck Kill when we had Bezos and Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. This is a worse game. Like I want to go back to that where I was fucking the Zuck. I want to go back to that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is basically Marry Kill between Darryl and Howard.
Right. Do we go for the lack of transparency government or do we go for somebody who we don't agree with, but we can at least have the ability to vote out in 4 years or less? I don't know.
Can they please shut the fuck up about his 80% of the vote?
Right, dude. I love it. I love it.
Nobody ran against you, you fuckwad.
I love
it.
They gotta
but
stop
some people
that
would
shit.
say that that's a strength of power, that nobody ran against you is a sign that people either think you're doing a good enough job that they didn't. I mean, we also shouldn't say nobody ran against you. There were other names on the ballot. But they didn't have funded and like attention grabbing campaigns. So they were not seen as serious contenders.
Right. Yeah.
Well, guys, speaking of being not a very serious contender, I got a lot of time on my hands these days, you guys. I just sit around, I think about segues, and I read perfect takes. And honestly, I've been enjoying myself, maybe even a little bit too much. But here's the rub. See, I've read all the takes, I think. And as far as I know, there is no website that is like this mass conglomeration of perfect takes in one spot for me to go find, right? Because I just parse through Twitter and retweet the perfect ones. Is there a better way for me to be doing this, like some site that I'm not aware of, where I have easier access to these perfect takes that I crave so much?
Yeah, man. I'm really glad you asked that, and I'm really sorry to hear about that. I gotta stop drinking all your whiskey. I didn't know that this was your situation.
Hey, man, either you drink it or I will, you know.
But there is what happened last night.
A little bit, yeah. But there is such a place, and that place is something I like to call voicesrivercity.com.
I heard of this. I think I've heard of this. Yeah.
We launched a little over 3 years ago. So there, you go all the way back. There's news, there's arts coverage, there's perfect takes, community voices speaking truth to power. We've got all sorts of work on there. Housing rights, Black Lives Matter, you name it. We've really been trying to go hard at it. We had Kenna Cook as a sex columnist too, who is phenomenal.
Loved those days.
Our current iteration now, Kenna actually reached out to me, so she's actually helping out with a little thing, TB announced.
Yay.
But yeah, things are amping up again. You know, like I said, the current iteration has been the podcast in recent months. But thanks to our Patreon support, we've been able to start considering diversifying what it is we're doing. So if you're not a Patreon supporter yet, please consider it. It helps us do what we love to do, and we're really excited about it. Patreon.com/Voices River City. But we are also on Facebook, Voices River City, Twitter @Voices River City, YouTube, we are Voices River City. You can look at our little faces as we talk. You can subscribe and like, and, you know, smash that love button. And smash that love button, huh?
Smash that love button.
And then we're also on
Sounds like
Instagram,
you're
and it's
talking
one of the
about a
funniest
clitoris.
fucking things. And Skylar's running our Instagram. And so I guess that's about it. You know, again, the Patreon, $5 is a beer at the bar that you're not going to right now because Gavin just shut the whole fucking thing down again.
You're not even allowed to go.
Yeah, you can't go.
And support local journalism. You know, we discussed this today. It's there's some wild shit going down.
But you also get some stuff for your buck, right? If you throw $5 in, then you have access to our exclusive Patreon content.
Mm-hmm. Skylar just gave us an hour of perfect takes on his views on the Democrats.
The most perfect takes. If I do say so
Yes.
myself.
And that is behind our Patreon paywall. If you can't afford it, just reach out to me. I'll get it to you. But Shannon's going to be coming in hot with one on the Golden State Killer and how
I
Anne-Marie
can't
Schubert
wait.
does not deserve a fucking lick of praise for taking him down. It was not her, and she sucks. So that's the kind of stuff that we've got behind.
Those are the kinds of takes that I'm loving.
Yeah.
I think about them and I love it.
We did lose
thinking
kind
about
of
him
an
right
eye
now.
with her Democrat Patreon, I think, because of your episode, Skylar.
Well, you
Did
win some, you
we?
lose some.
Yeah, I was gonna say she doesn't deserve any of the things for a myriad of reasons.
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
talk about that offline.
I'm still with that former patron, and I hope she reconsiders. But
We
that's
went
it.
pretty hard on those boomer Dems, man.
We really
We really didn't pull our punches on that one.
Yeah.
They deserve it.
Yeah, well, who knows?
Deserve it.
Dave, can I find you personally on Twitter anywhere?
Another great question. You're just full of perfect takes and questions
Full of
tonight.
perfect questions, perfect takes.
At Kempa, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I am guillotine for you. That's guillotine, the number 4. YOU.
Oh, it's my turn. I am Shan N.D. Stevens. And I'm so sorry, Tareen.
Hashtag, I'm so sorry, Tareen.
And I am Flojaune. That's FLOJAUNE.
All right.
All right, I think that's the show.
That
We
is
will
the
see
show.
you guys next Friday. We love you. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me, doubling down on that given our current state.
Yeah.
For real.
All right.
All right. Let's do it.
That's us.
Bye.